To make crystal geodes out of eggshells, we will need the following materials. First things first, of course, we need some eggshells. So try to use your eggs from breakfast. We don't want to waste, but just make sure you crack your eggs neatly. And if you can't crack them like this, crack them long ways, just so we have a lot of surface area to grow our crystals on. Also, we're going to need borax, which is seen here. We're going to need about 3/4 cups of borax powder. We're going to need 2 cups of water. We're also going to need food coloring, and your food coloring is going to help you decide what color crystals that you're going to grow. At home, you're going to be using a pot on the stove to boil your water, but here in the lab, I'm going to be using a hot plate and a beaker. All right, now that we have our materials down, the first thing we're going to need to do is make our super saturated borax solution. The way we're going to do this is we're going to add 2 cups of water into our pot at home or my beaker and 3/4 cups of borax powder, and then we are going to bring that to a boil. So as the mixture heats, be sure to stir it a bit with a spoon, and once it comes to a boil, it should be clear and most of your borax should be dissolved. If all of your borax does not dissolve, that's okay. That just ensures that we have a super saturated solution. Again, keep stirring your mixture until it comes to a gentle boil. And right now you can see that it is pretty opaque. It's not clear yet. So we're going to keep stirring and trying to add more borax into the solution. So once your borax solution comes to a gentle boil, it should then clear up and look more so like this. It might have a yellowish kind of brown tint, but that's okay. That's just because the salt crystals have now fully dissolved in the water, and we now have a super saturated solution that we will now have to cool. So you can remove your pot at home from the fire, but I'm going to use safety gloves and then remove my hot beaker from the hot plate so that it can cool down. So now that we've removed our super saturated borax solution from the heat, we are now going to allow it to cool down. And this cooling process, very slow cooling process, is key to make sure that our crystals form very uniformly and even. So just give it about 15 to 20 minutes to properly cool down to about room temperature. Your borax solution, or your super saturated borax solution, should now be clear, so it shouldn't be opaque anymore. And also it should be room temperature, or at least cool enough that we can touch it. We don't want it completely cold though. And after you create this, you'll be ready to get into the activity. So now that we've created our super saturated borax solution, we can now get started with the activity. Moving forward, you're going to need your super saturated solution with borax and water. Again, our solution was 2 cups of water and 3/4 cups of borax powder. And then we brought that to a boil, and then we cooled it to room temperature enough so we can touch and manage it. Then, depending on how many geodes you're going to want to make or how many different colored geodes you're going to want to make, you're going to need secondary containers. So see here, I have two smaller beakers, so I'm essentially going to make two different colored geodes here. And again, to make our geodes different colors, we're going to be using everyday food coloring, seen here. And our crystals, which are in our supersaturated borax solution, are going to be growing on eggshells. So just make sure that your eggshells are pretty much intact like this, and they have a good surface to grow crystals. Make sure they're dry and clean, so no of the inside egg remnants left behind here. All right, so we need supersaturated borax solution, secondary containers to create our different colored crystal geodes. We need the food coloring to color our crystal geodes, and also we're going to need our clean and dry eggshells. All right. Again, we won't be seeing any crystals form today, but today we're going to set up the conditions for crystals to form. To do that, we're going to first add a little bit or enough of some of our supersaturated borax solution to our secondary containers. Again, I just have two here, but you can decide how many geodes that you want to make or how many different colored geodes that you want to make, and just make sure that you pour out an aliquot or separate enough solution for your different colors and the different amount of eggs. So again, here I have 2 cups with supersaturated borax solution, so essentially I could do 2 different colors. So I'm going to choose to do green, and you can go ahead and add a few drops of food coloring to your supersaturated borax solution. And then I'm going to make a blue one. You know what? The science of mixing colors, you guys. I'm going to want to make teal over here, so I'm going to add 2 drops of blue to that green. And then overhead, over here, I want this blue to be a little bit deeper, so I'm going to add some red food coloring, just 2 drops of red food coloring to that beaker. We're going to want to give these a stir. All right. And then go ahead and give this one a stir. All right. So now that we have our colored solutions, our colored supersaturated solutions, we're now going to want to place our eggshells down inside the solutions, and just make sure that the inside of the eggshell is face up. And you want to put them all the way submerged down into the cups. Bye, Mr. Eggshell. See you soon when you turn into a geode. So our eggshells have to sit in our colored supersaturated borax solutions at least overnight. So here is where I'm going to pause my video, then I'm going to share some time-lapse photos of the crystals growing on the eggshell. So right now, this is at hour 0. So we just placed our eggshells in the supersaturated borax solution. And once you guys do this at home, I want you to make sure you set your eggshells in a place that doesn't vibrate a lot and will not be disturbed, and just let them go. Check back after 1 day, and after 1 complete day, I want you to write down or record your observations of what you see. One cool thing about this experiment is that the more patient you are, the better crystals that you'll get. So there'll be crystals growing on your eggshells after 1 day, but if you leave it longer, let's say for 2 days, the crystals will be even bigger and more magical. So it's only been about 1 hour, and you can already see that we have borax crystals falling out of our supersaturated solution. So in the back was just our supersaturated solution without coloring, and the two beakers in the front, again, are our supersaturated solutions with food coloring, and also our eggshells are inside there. So you can see after about an hour, we have crystallization on the top of the surface. And also, you should see some crystals gathering up at the bottom of your cups or your flasks or beakers or whatever you're using at home. So after about 1 hour at room temperature, you can see as our supersaturated borax solution cools down that we have crystals falling out of solution or precipitating to the bottom of the flask. Now, our colored experiments for our geodes also have precipitation of borax crystals in the bottom of the beakers, but they also have crystals forming on top. And this is what we want to see. So, if your experiment is looking like this, then we are all good to go. Keep up the good work. And again, do not disturb your crystals. Just observe them with your eyes, and you can write down your observations or take pictures, and you guys can make your own time-lapse experiment as well. So we were patient enough to wait overnight, and let's take a look and see how our geodes formed. Now you can see a lot of crystallization of the borax salt on the beaker or probably on your cups at home themselves, but we're going to go ahead and grab a pair of tweezers and also some paper towel to move forward. Now, just because I can see it and it's lighter, I'm going to go ahead and reach in and try to grab my green eggshell out of here. So you might have to give it a little tug to detach it from the bottom, but after you wiggle them around, they should come out looking like this. How cool, right? Now, the salt crystals in the center are probably some that just fell off of the top of the solution after I disturbed it, but we're going to go ahead and place this back in because I want to check out the one that's in the blue. Oh. Again, they might be stuck because of the crystals to the bottom of your cup, but just go ahead and give them a little wiggle and a pull. Ooh. And it should free up and look just like this. And here, my blue one has a lot more crystallization than the green one did. So what I'm going to do is actually employ a second experiment. I'm going to take the blue one out and set it on my paper towel to dry. But I'm going to leave my green one in the solution and see if larger crystals grow on my blue geode. All right, so this is a geode, an egg geode with borax crystals on it after about 16 to 18 hours or overnight. We're going to leave this one go a little bit more, and I'll come back to the lab and check it. All right, you guys, this is what our blue geode looks like now that it has dried overnight. So you can see that there's large crystals that have formed and covered our entire eggshell. And it's also a lot heavier because that solid salt has crystallized to the egg shell structure and made this eggshell a lot more sturdy and a lot more heavier. More dense and more mass has been added to the eggshell. So it's actually pretty hard. So remember, this is how much formed how much salt crystals formed after 16 hours or overnight, and then we then dried it overnight. But remember I said I was going to leave the geode that was growing in the green solution over 2 nights. So I'm going to again grab my tweezers, and now we're going to remove our green geode, which has been growing for about 2 days now. And again, you might need to wiggle to detach it from the bottom of your cup or flask. But then once we lift it up, wow. Okay, so this is really, really cool. So the only thing I notice here is that the crystals are just a little bit larger in diameter when comparing over 1 night to over 2 nights, but the thickness of the crystals is just about the same here. So we're going to do the same for this crystal geode. I'm going to flip it upside down so that it drains properly and everything gets dried so that our salt crystals really stick onto there. And then we're going to come back to it in a few hours and talk about and just observe our Easter egg geodes. So I'm going to give this a second to dry, and then once it dries, we're going to come back and just do a little observation of our eggshell geodes. Amazing, right? We created rock geodes from eggshells and borax salt. And we also learned a lot about crystallization in the process. But now that these have dried again overnight, they're pretty sturdy, but crystals again are still very fragile. So you guys can use these for decorations, but make sure you keep them in a safe place where they will not get damaged by any of your siblings or maybe a pet knocking them off of a shelf. Pretty cool, huh? You can go ahead and try to make more colors if you have. So again, you could just repeat the procedure next time mom makes some eggs and just change up the food coloring options. Cool.